And this session will focus, we're finally leaving the phonics behind. We are now moving on to higher skills. We're moving on to Clover. So the previous months, they were pretty similar to each other because it was all phonics-based instruction, phonics-based lesson plans. We had month one was the alphabet, month two was the blends, month three was the digraphs, and now we're on to Clover. So this month and next month are both going to be based in Clover when it comes to the assignments that you need to submit for month four and month five. Let me actually share my screen with you. And here I have the list of requirements. So month four and month five both have to do with Clover. So for both months, we're going to use the same lesson plan, the same template. Today, I'm going to guide you through these first three lesson plans. And again, since it's the same template, the steps are going to look pretty similar. What's going to change is what I write on my index cards that I'm going to use. And then for the following months, it's going to be pretty similar, the same template, but slightly different in that the lesson plans for next month will be based on vowel teams and R-controlled syllables or R-controlled sounds. Those are slightly different than the ones we'll see today because the ones that we'll see today are based on certain sounds that we need to identify and certain syllable division rules. Whereas next month's lesson plans, the ones with vowel teams and R-controlled sounds, are not so much about rules. The rules that apply are the rules from the other syllables. These are more about exposure to different sounds, exposure to different sounds that make a particular vowel sound, or exposure to different words that contain an R-controlled sound that changes the sound of the vowel. But in any case, we'll go step by step as usual. We'll focus on this month. And for this month, you have to submit 4 different lesson plans. One for closed syllables, one for consonant LE, one for open syllables, and one for vowel consonant E, magic E, silent E, final E. So it's 4 individual lesson plans. And you also need to submit a video of one of those lesson plans being delivered. So you choose which one and you're going to deliver it. With a student, remember that the video needs to have you doing every step along the way. I'm going to show you how to do every step, how to write the lesson plan so that you can prepare for both the lesson plan and the actual video. And you should also submit students' work. Students' work is sheets that they write on. Students' work is the fluency table of words that you use to time them. Anything that they write, anything that they do, that is considered student work, and it's also required that you submit it. You can just take pictures of it and submit it that way. These month's assignments, month 4 assignments, will be due before we have the next session, which is, let me just confirm, I think it's March 9th, but let me make sure. March 9th, where am I here? Yes, it is March 9th at 4 p.m. Now, slight change of plans for that next session. I'm not going to be running it. Dr. Levy is. And the topic is going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. What we're used to doing up until now is that every month I go over the lesson plans that you need to do, how to write them, and I do a quick demo, and that's it. Next month, we're not going to cover the lesson plans. Next month, Dr. Levy is going to run a session focused on dyslexia and how to do different diagnostics for identifying symptoms of dyslexia. So this is going to be off the requirements. This is going to be off the lesson plans. You're not going to need to prepare any materials ahead of time. It's going to be more of a presentation to understand dyslexia and also how the program, all these strategies, all this Orton-Gillingham approach will be beneficial for students who have dyslexia. I will be sending out a communication about this, but just so you know, heads up about next month's session. It's Tuesday, March 9th, and Dr. Levy is going to conduct a session focused on dyslexia. Now, back to our session here. I'm going to close out the requirements and start going over some materials. So remember that for MaxWords, just like I had in MaxPhonics, there's going to be a template, a lesson plan template that I'll use and reproduce for any of the modules that I'm working on in MaxWords. So if you go to the material section and you go into your MaxWords tab, the first file is going to be your lesson plan, which include the steps, a sample, and a template. You'll notice that it says 2021. I recently updated the template to just make it easier to follow. And I have it opened up already here. It looks like this. I'm going to do a brief review since, again, this is the first lesson past the phonics. So I'm going to do a brief review of what you might have seen on the very, very first training session that you had. So there's 7 different steps included in this lesson plan. 7 basic core steps. You can add more. And what you have on this page is what the step is called, what you're supposed to do, brief instructions of what you're supposed to say, etc. At the end of this page, the details, the 7 steps, you have additional exercises. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Additional exercises that you can add. When it comes to MaxWords, we're dealing with harder skills. It's concepts, it's rules that I need to remember. So it is important that I pace out this lesson and really incorporate as much drill and practice as I can. When it comes to phonics skills, it's a lot easier. It's a letter, picture, sound, and then I go one sound plus another sound, and I blend sounds together, but that's pretty much it. Here, I need to remember what a closed syllable is. I need to remember what to do with a closed syllable when I find it in a multisyllabic word. So it requires a lot more explanation. It requires a lot more guidance and a lot more activities for drill and practice. You'll want to keep that in mind for your video. I'm going to show you a few activities that I've come up with along the way. You can certainly use those, or you can come up with more that will help you add more to the basic 7 steps. So we'll go over the steps one by one, but I want to keep going through the file so you know what you'll find in it. The second page and a few after that, it's a sample of a lesson plan that's already been filled in. So this is what your lesson plan should end up looking like. This sample is for CLOVER for the consonant LE syllables. So we started with a review of previous lessons, which were the closed syllables. I'm reviewing some words that I did on the closed syllable lesson, and I'm writing down what I want my students to do. In this case, I want them to syllabicate each word and tap out the sounds in each syllable. I'll explain how they syllabicate and how they tap out the sound as I demonstrate the steps in a minute. So here we have the 7 different steps, starting with the visual. Remember that every box that you see is equivalent to an index card that you should have when you're doing the lesson. So when you're submitting the lesson plan, you can just submit the Word document. But when you're doing the video, when you're actually doing the lesson, make sure that each of your boxes is represented in a card. So if we're using this example that is on the screen, we have the consonant LE, which is a final syllable ending with a consonant and the letters LE. The E is silent. Then for every other box, I have examples. I have an index card. For my example words, if you see my screen and you see my cards, you'll see that there's a lot of overlap. Oop. Here I code the sounds because that's going to help me with the syllable division rule, which is this, that I'll do the division before the consonant LE. And I'm rushing through this, but I'll go back to it. It's just so you see what my cards look like. So I have multisyllabic words where I split words into syllables. I have a multisyllabic word when I point out the consonant LE at the end of that word. This is a strategy when it comes to consonant LE words. I can count 3 from the end and do the split there. So I would do 1, 2, 3, split. Here I would ask my students to just split this word for me into syllables. And again, different examples, some vocabulary work that I added. These would be new vocabulary words that have the consonant LE. So I'll go back to these. I just wanted to show you what all my cards for the visual step look like. So every card that I just pulled up on the screen are my cards that I would use for step 1 of this lesson plan of the consonant LE. Then everything else that is written out on this lesson plan is pretty much words or sentences or stories that you're asking the student to do something with. Either you're dictating them for the student to write, or you're giving the words so that they can trace it on a surface, or use the alpha chips, remember the alpha chips, to form those words. So the only thing that you'll need to make cards for is step 1. Everything else is just a list of words or a list of sentences that you'll use and give to your students to do something with. We'll see what that something is as we go step by step. So here are some examples of words with the consonant LE that I'm using for my lesson. Remember, on the fluency, here is where we're really going to time the students and give them a score with how many words they read correctly. More words, sentences, and at the end there's a story. And then the following pages, the pages at the end, is that lesson plan emptied out. So this is the template that you'll use to write your 4 lesson plans. You'll save 1 for the closed syllables, save 1 for the consonant LE, 1 for open syllables, and 1 for the vowel consonant E. Those are the 4 that you need to submit this month, next month, technically. So I'll go back to the first page and then we'll start going step by step. So this is titled the Multisyllabic Words Lesson Plan. Remember that MaxWords is where the students learn about multisyllabic words and the bits and pieces that make up multisyllabic words. So if you have a multisyllabic word, it's a combination of syllables, it's a combination of sounds, it's a combination of sometimes prefixes, sometimes suffixes, sometimes roots. And through MaxWords, they learn about all these different bits and pieces. Right now we're dealing with CLOVER, which is syllable types and syllabication rules. So this month and next month are focused on that, on syllable types and syllabication rules. But it is important that students can understand and know not only how to, oh, I have people in the waiting room, hold on a minute. So it's important that students understand not only how one sound plus another sound and another sound become a word, which is what we teach them in phonics, but also the opposite. Given a multisyllabic word that I don't know, that I've never seen before, do I also have the ability to break it down to the basics? Identify the prefixes, identify the suffixes, identify the syllables in this case, which is what we're focusing on. Having that ability, having that knowledge will really help the students deal with multisyllabic words in general, because they won't be as threatening. You know, a word that is long, that I don't know, that I don't know what it means, I've never seen it before. Usually I'm just gonna try and skip it and move on. But again, if I can identify those little bits and pieces are a lot less menacing. So that's what we want them to do with CLOVER. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining. I was saying, where's Cheryl? I was thinking to myself, but there you are. So I was just doing a brief introduction, guys. For you two that just joined, I'll send out a notification, but regarding next month's session, it's Tuesday, March 9th. I'm not going to be running it. Dr. Levy will, and we'll change the subject a little bit. Up until now, it's been me helping you guys through the lesson plans and clarifying what you need to do. This next session is going to be focused on dyslexia, identifying symptoms of dyslexia, and doing a diagnostic. So next session will be Dr. Levy focused on dyslexia. I'll be back the following month. Just FYI, I'm gonna send out an email, but just so you know. So back to here, I'll start going step by step on our lesson, which I got from the materials section. So step one is the visual drill. I'm always going to compare it to what we already know from the phonics program. The visual drill is where I am introducing something to my student. In the phonics, it's where I was introducing a letter, picture, sound combination. Here, like I said, it's concepts. It's a little bit more advanced. What I'm introducing in Clover specifically, it's a syllable type. So for our time together today, I'll be referring to syllable types or syllable division rules. But remember, this lesson plan you can adapt to different modules in MaxWords. Today, we're going to focus on the Clover on syllables. So on the visual step, on the visual drill, we're going to introduce the relevant skill, aka the syllable type, by name, along with its definition or meaning. In this case, it's going to be the definition of how I can identify a closed syllable, for example, or a specific syllable type. You will use index cards. Those are the index cards that I was holding up to make this introduction while showing them to the students, the cards. You should use several more index cards to expose students to words that are relevant to that syllable type. So we're going to have cards for the name of the syllable, how to identify that syllable, several example words, some one-syllable words, some multisyllabic words. I have a fan that it's blowing all my cards away. And then we'll get to the syllable division rule. So again, more index cards. This is all step one. My syllable division rule for the closed syllables. This is how the split should look like. These are vowels. These are consonants. And this is how it looks when I do it in an actual word. And you can choose different words. I took this from the material section. I just downloaded the fluency list and I just picked a few. And then I also chose a few that I believe will be new vocabulary for my students. So here I'm not only focusing on the syllable type and the syllable division rule, but also let's work on building vocabulary. So I added the definitions of these words at the back, which will come in handy on the following steps. I just wanted you to see them at this point. So visual drill is where I introduce the syllable type, the words, the syllable division rule, and apply that rule into some of the words that I had here. Then we go to step two, which is the auditory tactile drill. Again, let's compare it to the phonics. The auditory tactile was either where I was tracing letters or where my teacher was telling me a letter to write and I need to identify it and then write it down. There's some pronunciation, there's some dictation, and then the student is expected to do something with the sound or the words that they identify. So in this case, you can see it says, give 5 to 10 words to the students which are relevant for the skill taught. It can be the same words that I used in my cards. Ideally, it's going to be different words because, again, we also want to expand on vocabulary. And they will trace them on a surface. Remember when we were in the phonics, we were doing the sky tracing or sand or a Ziploc bag with paint, whatever it is, you choose what the surface is. And then we're going to have them write those words on paper. Here, it's a little bit more advanced. It's not just one letter at a time that I'm doing. It's words that have closed syllables. Then we get to step number 3, that is the sound blending. This is where it starts changing a little bit. The sound blending, when we talk about the phonics, is where I was using my alpha chips, right? And I was tapping and blending the sounds together, or I was using my finger tapping to do so. But here we're talking about multisyllabic words. So you're probably either not going to have enough alpha chips because you're going to have letters that are repeated, or you're not going to have enough fingers because it's going to be a multisyllabic word. So what we want to do with these words is split the sound blending and tapping into 2 mini exercises, if you will. So we'll give the students 5 to 10 more words, or you can use the same words. And we're going to have them first split the words into syllables and then tap out the sound. So those are the two mini exercises for step 3. So if I have a word, for example, magnet, what I'll do first is split it into syllables. Now, you already did the visual introduction, so they already went through these words, they already went through the syllable division rule. I'll do a quick demo in a minute. But what I want them to do is split it first. A little trick that you can use to know how many syllables a word has is put your hand below your chin, and the word has as many syllables as many times that your jaw drops. So if I have the word magnet, I'll see magnet. My jaw dropped twice. I'm looking for 2 syllables. If I know the rule, I can just use the rule. But if I don't, you can clap it out. You can do several things. For the exercise, this again can come up on your video. When you're having them split the word into syllables, you can have them pound on their palm like that, magnet, 1 pound per syllable. And then each syllable, I'm going to tap out and blend. So at that point, you can pull out your alpha chips, or if you want to save time, be a little bit less messy, you can always go to the finger tapping. So if it's magnet, I do magnet, and then I do mag, et, net, magnet. Okay, so it's pound for syllables, tap for sounds. Now, this step will look a little bit different when you're doing different lesson plans. Remember I said next month, it's focused on vowel teams. You're not going to tap out the vowel teams. You're not going to sound out the vowel teams. There, you're probably just going to focus on tracing the sounds or tracing the letters. Because if you have, for example, a vowel team, like, let me look at the one that I'm thinking about. Here, this one. How do I sound it out? It's going to be weird. And then there's different vowels that look the same, vowel teams that look the same, but sound very different. The double O has several different sounds. The combination EU has several different sounds. So when we get to those lesson plans, remember I said it's going to be slightly different because the steps are going to look a little bit different. We're not focused on syllable divisions. We're not focused on rules. We're just focused on exposure when it comes to vowel teams and R-controlled sounds. These steps that I'm going over right now will be applicable to every other section that is not a vowel team, that is not an R-controlled syllable, but you might have to change the wording here and there to adapt to the syllable type that you're working with at that point. So steps 2 and 3 are both different words with closed syllables, let's say, which is the first lesson of CLOVER. On step 2, I'm kind of saying the words to the students and they need to trace them on a surface. And then on step 3, they're splitting the word into syllables and then tapping out the sounds on each syllable. Then we get to step 4, the fluency, the same fluency that we're used to in the phonics. We're going to get our list of words from the material section. Let me remind you where that is. We're on our dashboard. We have the material section for MaxWords. The file that I'm using is this first one with the steps, the template, etc. And here you have the fluency words. So this is what I opened up, and this is where I took my examples to do my cards for every group of sounds. Here you have all of them, including the vowel teams, including the R controlled. So all of them are in this same file. So here I just chose a few. And when I'm ready to do the fluency, this is the list that I'm going to use. If this list is too complicated, you can go ahead and make a shorter one. Just do a new Word document and do 9 words at a time, do 12 words at a time. You can build your way up to this longer list. Remember, this is all the fluency exercise. It's all a matter of improving that automaticity, making that number of words that I read per minute go up and up with each attempt. So back to the fluency here. That's where I get the words. We're gonna time the students for 60 seconds. When you're just submitting the lesson plan, you're not gonna write anything on that part of the lesson. You're just gonna attach the list of words that you're going to use. But until you actually are working with the students, there's nothing for you to submit, because what step 4 is the score that you're giving the students on the fluency drill. So until you actually sit with the student and do it, you're not gonna have a score for them. All you can submit at this point is just the list that you plan to use. Then we got to step 5. Yet again, more words, more word dictation. This is slightly different than the word exercises that we've seen on this lesson plan so far. And this is titled Spelling Dictation and SOS. SOS appears on your teacher manuals. It stands for Simultaneous Oral Spelling. And there, on that step, you're going to choose 5 to 10 words. I listed 10 words. It can be 5 to 10. Again, you'll adapt it to your students. And you can recycle the words that you use in any of the previous steps, because we're dealing with the syllable type that this lesson plan is going over, right? And we're going to dictate those words to the students. The simultaneous oral spelling, or SOS, what it means is that you're going to say the word to your students. You're going to ask them how many syllables they can hear, how many syllables they think the word has. We're going to have them pound out like we did on step 4. They're going to pound out each syllable. They're going to tap it in blending, and then they're going to write it down on paper. So it's an added step to step 4 that we did previously. Step 3, sorry, that we did previously. Then we have the sentence dictation and CUPS. CUPS, another writing strategy, stands for, and it's also on your teacher manual, it stands for capitalization, organization, punctuation, and spelling. This is definitely something that you want to incorporate on your video. Heads up, Dr. Levy is going to be looking for that. The SOS on step 5 and the CUPS on step 6. Pretty much what you're doing on step 6 is that you're dictating sentences to your students. You're coming up with those sentences. They're not built into the program. I mean, you have some in the program, but there's not a document for it on the material section. You come up with it based on the words that you've used on your lesson plan. And you're going to tell the sentence to your students. You're going to ask them to tell you how many words they can hear. All of this is written. I'm just talking off the top of my head, but it's all written down. You're going to ask them how many words they hear. Once they answer, you're going to have them write it down. Before you check their work, before you check their writing, they are going to go through the CUPS strategy. It's kind of like a self-check strategy that they use. So before they submit it to you, they wrote down the sentence, and they're going to check, did I capitalize where I needed to capitalize? Did I organize the words based on the sentence that I hear? Did I use proper punctuation? And did I spell the words correctly? So they'll do a check. Of course, they might miss some things, but it'll be an added step for them to be accountable when it comes to the writing. And then they'll submit it to you, and then you'll do the corrections that are necessary. I suggest that once you do the corrections, you have them write the sentences over again correctly. And here I said, actually, come up with 5 to 10 sentences. Something that you can do as an added exercise is you come up with 5 and have the student come up with an additional 5. For example, if I'm doing the closed syllables, right? I put them all mixed up, but anyways, if I'm doing the closed syllables, at the end, I showed cards in a different color, and I said that these would be my new vocabulary words for this lesson plan. So what I will do for step 6 is I will deal with the easy sentences. I will dictate 5 of them, 7 of them. And then I have 3 new vocabulary words. So what I'm going to do is give them the words, give them the definition of the word, and then ask them to complete the 10 sentences, do their 3 original sentences with the new vocabulary words that we learned in this lesson. And again, that's an idea. You don't have to. You can do all 10. You can do just 5 if your students can just do 5. So, and yes, Colleen, the COPS is very useful not only for Max Scholar, of course, but with any writing, because sometimes, especially when it's a dictation, you just tend to write quickly, but then when you go back, you realize, oh, I missed a letter in a word, or oh, I didn't capitalize where I should have, or I didn't use punctuation. So it is very important that the students are aware of what they're writing before they submit it, or typing in these days, aware of what they're typing before they submit it. So the last step is max reading. It's called max reading. I call it read. It's pretty much, again, if we compare it to the phonics lesson, it would be like the control readers that come at the end, where you use the side words, the words, the sentences that lesson has covered. But here, what you can do is just have the student go to max reading, do a chapter there, write the outline, use the COP strategy, write a summary, use the COP strategy, answer the reading comprehension, and you kind of ease their way into the reading. You can do that and take it a little bit further. You can tell them, okay, here is the story. I want you to write down all the words that you find that have closed syllables in them, for example, so that we incorporate this lesson into text that they're reading separately, right? Off the lesson plan. Option 3 that you have. So option 1 is just have them do a reading and do the exercises there. Option 2, have them do the reading and an added activity that has to do, that ties to this lesson. For example, making a list of all the words with closed syllables. And then option 3 is that you make up your own story, once again, using the sentences or using the words that you covered in this lesson. Now, at the very bottom of this page, what you see is additional exercises that you can add. I put a few examples. You can come up with more. For example, write or explain the skill taught, or have the students write or explain the skill taught in their own words. Have them do their own index cards. Like I just mentioned, when reading a text, underline the words that are relevant to the skill taught, the syllable type that we're going over. Work on new vocabulary. I incorporated it by introducing new words and their definitions and having the students write their own original sentences. If you have the workbook, do the workbook pages. If you don't have it, complete worksheets that you can get from the materials section. Here, for example, for Clover, you have additional worksheets with more drill and practice. And of course, you're going to want to have them do these sections on the computer, on the software as well, which is also additional drill and practice. And you have reports and data for that automatically as the students do it on their end. So now I want to do a quick demo of what it looks like. I'm going to show you once again my Clover cards, and then I'm going to use this lesson plan sample that I have for the consonant LE to go over step by step from this lesson plan. And then I'm just going to briefly show on my screen all my visual cards that I have for Clover, which again, I just sat down, clicked through the program. I downloaded the fluency tables of words, and that's how I wrote my cards. So the first sample, you can disregard the consonant LE, are closed syllables. So closed syllables have a short vowel sound that is surrounded by consonants. It can be surrounded on one side only or both. I start with one syllable words, just so that I can identify that short vowel sound surrounded by consonants. Cat. Short A, surrounded by consonants. Pet, short vowel surrounded by consonants. You might initially want to stick to just one syllable words and drill that down, just identifying the syllable type. And then eventually you might want to bring the multisyllabic words and the syllable division rules. Lid, short vowel surrounded by consonants. I coded the sounds here because this will help me with the syllable division rule that's coming up in a minute. Now I start using multisyllabic words. If I identify that pattern that I've been talking about, I'll see the short vowel surrounded by consonants, short vowel surrounded by consonants. So I start seeing that there's more than one syllable, catnip, 2 syllables. And I identify those patterns of short vowels surrounded by consonants. Same here. Same here. And I coded those sounds. Now comes the syllable division rule. I'm more of a visual person, so this means enough to me. For your students, you might have to write it out what this means. This means that in closed syllables or multisyllabic words with closed syllables, I'll find the pattern of a short vowel surrounded by a consonant and a short vowel surrounded by a consonant, and the division will be between the consonants that separate those vowels. To me, this means split between the consonants that separate the vowels. And that's the rule. Here is what a word ends up looking like when I split it into syllables using this pattern. I'm splitting between the consonants that separate those short vowels. And now I'll show this to my students. I have the word, I coded it for them. So if I'm looking for this pattern, I'll split where I find it, which is right here. So I'll split between the S and the K. Basket, 2 syllables. I know that the division is between the S and the K because those are the consonants separating the vowels. So if I clap it out, I should have the same result. Basket. And now I'm gonna just show them a word and I'm gonna ask them to explain everything that I just explained to them. So notice how I present the cards in different ways. Sometimes I split it for them and I ask them or explain why I did it that way. Sometimes I give them the word and code them. I ask them to split. Sometimes I just give them a word and ask them, what do I do now? They need to code the sounds. They need to find the pattern. They need to split the syllable. So I present it in many different ways. Selfish, I already split it. So here I would expect the explanation of why I split it there. So those would be my visual cards for step 1 of the closed syllable lesson. Then I would have 5 to 10 words that I tell my students so that they can trace it on a surface. Then another 5 to 10 words that they're going to pound out and tap each of the sounds in a syllable. Then I'll time them on the fluency. Then I'll dictate some words. I want for them to do the SOS, where we also pound out the syllables and tap out the sounds on each syllable. Then I dictate sentences and then I do the story. Now, let's see how I do it when I actually have a lesson plan that I already wrote out, which is the one that you have on the sample, on the document. The sample that you have in the document is what I meant to say. So the consonant LE. First, we're gonna review previous lessons. It's just like in the phonics. Before you start a new group of sounds, you review the previous one. Same idea. So the previous lesson was the closed syllables. These are some of the words that I used in that lesson plan. So what I'll ask my students to do as a quick review session, as a quick review activity, is for them to syllabicate each word and tap out the sounds in each syllable. I just chose a few. Obviously, I went through way more words on the actual lesson because there were several steps involved. I just chose a few, and that's my review. Now we're on to the new lesson, which is the consonant LE. So I do my introduction. The consonant LE is a final syllable ending with a consonant and the letters LE. The E here is silent. For example, the word apple ends in a consonant LE, the E is silent. Fable ends in a consonant LE, and the E is silent. Yes, you'll have a recording of the session. Purple ends in a consonant LE, the E is silent. Here I went back to coding it so we can start seeing those patterns. Those are what are going to help us identify the syllable division rule. Now I go to the syllable division rule, which looks like this. Again, I'm a visual person. This is enough for me. You might have to write it out. What this means is that the split comes before the consonant that is before the LE. So this would be the previous vowel, the previous syllable, sorry. Then the split, and then the consonant LE. Another way that you can use with this type of syllables is actually count 3 from the end and then do the split. So 1, 2, 3, split. 1, 2, 3, split. Or I split before the consonant, before the LE. Trouble, I have the consonant LE, so I'll do the split right here. Trouble. Circle. 1, 2, 3. That's where I would split. And again, notice that I present it in different ways. Here I would just ask my student to split it for me. And here I would ask them the explanation as to why I split it that way. Here I also selected some new vocabulary words, but I'm going to leave this for later. I'm going to leave this for the sentence exercise. So those cards that I just showed you are my visual cards. That's what these boxes are filled in with. Consonant LE, what it means, the syllable division rule, I wrote it out this time, and my example words. Then we get to the auditory tactile drill. I selected 6 words this time. And what I have my students do, and you have the instructions on the first page, is trace the word puzzle, trace the word jungle, or write the word gentle, write the word simple. This is just tracing and writing. They're not doing the tapping yet. That is step 3. So here I chose different words, all finishing or all ending with that consonant LE. Here, what I want them to do is to blend the sounds together. Here it's going to be a little bit tricky because I can't sound out that consonant LE. The E is silent, so I don't need to sound it out. So what I'll do here for the consonant LE specifically, as opposed to the closed syllables where I could sound out every letter in that word, what I'll probably do is that I'll have them just do the pounding, right? The ka, po, for example, and just do some sort of exercise such as this. I have several words that all end with the consonant LE, specifically the DLE. So I can do middle, middle. So that's the sound blending. I'm sounding out or tapping out the entire syllable, not each sound, but the syllable. Middle, middle. Candle, candle. So again, it's still a sound blending drill, but you're adapting it a little bit. If you can sound out each letter in the syllable, you'll use your fingers. If you can't, then you'll just tap the entire syllable and then blend it into the word. This is one of my additional exercises, by the way, that I add to my lesson. Then it's the fluency. I had random students that I made up in my head, and I gave them a score with how many words they read correctly in that minute. Remember here, when they have that list of words that they're going over, they're not decoding. We're not spending time on each word. We're reading, reading, reading. At the end, I want that word count to go up. So what I suggest is that you let them do a practice run, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe, like I said, make a shorter fluency word list so that they can get used to it. Here, it's multisyllabic words. It's not the same as in the phonics, where it was just 2, 3 letters at a time. Here it's multisyllabic words, so it's a little bit more challenging. You can make it easier for your students. Then we have step 5, which is the spelling dictation. This is where the SOS comes in. Once again, I'll do the tapping of each of those words. And since I'm not sounding out each sound, I'll do something along these lines, this type of exercise. Then we have the sentences. So here, I came up with 5 sentences. In blue are the words that have the consonant LE. And then notice that from 6 to 10, I left it pretty much empty. And it says student's original sentence. This is where my color cards will come in. These are new vocabulary words. Mumble, what it means. Crumple, what it means. Nimble, what it means. And now I'm going to give my students time to come up with their original sentences. Maybe it's going to be too challenging for them to just go ahead and write it out. So what you can do is have them verbally say the sentence and you help them write it down. But this is a good opportunity to incorporate students' independent work and to incorporate new vocabulary as well. And these also are part of the fluency list. So they will be exposed to these words. That's why I want to add the vocabulary word, the definitions and all of that. And then for max reading, or for the final step with a story, I have them go to the reading program and do a story there. On the material section, you'll find here, Module 1, Clover Reading Passages. This is from a teacher from New York, I think, that went through the course last school year. And as he was doing his lesson plans, he said, I came up with original passages for that last step. Here they are, share them with others. So you can take examples of what he did for closed syllables, for consonant LE. So instead of having the student go through a max reading story, he actually chose specific words from his lesson plan and he wrote short stories. Remember, those stories don't necessarily need to make sense. It's just to incorporate the skills taught into text. So there you have some examples. Remember, on the materials, you also have the lesson plan, additional worksheets, the fluency words, samples of the visual cards, etc., etc., etc. So make sure that you use those materials in the material section when writing out your lesson plan. And your template is going to look the same. So I just briefly showed you my closed syllable cards. I briefly showed you my setup, or how I would do the consonant LE. And then I just want to show you a few more things here. I have several of these where the students manipulate the cards and the words. That is for consonant LE. This is for the silent E. The silent E always makes the previous vowel long. Tap becomes tape. Tub becomes tube. Rip becomes ripe. Din becomes dine. These are my open syllables, which end in a long vowel sound. Pilot, pilot. Here I would also do the syllable tapping as opposed to the finger tapping. These are my closed syllable ones. I could tell them, find the word velvet. Vel. Vet. Velvet. Velvet. And I can do the finger tapping because these are closed syllables. Another example. I have this. This is easier if you have it on a table. I just had to improvise so that I could hold it up. So I have syllables and more syllables here. So if I have my words in steps 2 and 3 and 5, I can tell them, form the word selfish. And I can do the sound blending or the syllable blending. Selfish, selfish. Find the word plastic, or form the word plastic. Plastic, plastic. Form the word himself. And then form the word napkin. Napkin, napkin. Himself, himself. And I can do the finger tapping again because these are closed syllables. So again, the more activities you add, the better. The more drill and practice that your students get, the more likely that they are to really internalize those rules and for them to become automatic in their head. So I'll show you briefly the O cards. That's the open syllables. The O in Clover, I mean, it's the open syllables. Open syllables and in a long vowel, such as go, long vowel, no, long vowel, open, That's a long vowel. That's a short vowel. Open. So I know that there's two syllables in that word. This would be the open syllable. This is a short vowel surrounded by consonants, so it's a closed syllable. Again, in multisyllabic words, different syllable types interact with each other. That's why it's important to be able to recognize them. Minus, long vowel, short vowel, closed syllable, open syllable. This is a syllable division rule. The split goes after that long vowel, such as baby. Long vowel, split. Human, long vowel, this is where the split would go. Human. I'll just run through some of these. Here, table, I recognize this, the consonant LE. So here I can split it from the front or from the back. I can do 1, 2, 3 split, or I can say after the long vowel sound comes the split. Either way, I'll have the right syllabication. So that's the O. The other lesson plan that you're right for this month, it's closed syllables, consonant LE, open syllables, and the E in Clover, which is a silent E. So you have the silent E or vowel consonant E, which ends with a silent E, and it makes the previous vowel long. Tape is the example that I gave before. Tap becomes tape. Gam becomes game. Not becomes note. And these are usually one syllable words, so there's no syllable division rule here. But I do a lot of folding and unfolding, tactile exercises like that. Rob becomes robe, or Rob becomes robe, etc. Now, since we're not going to have next session, which is going to be or would be focused on Clover, but the two sections that are a little bit different, which are the V and the R, vowel teams and R-controlled sounds, remember that for these, you'll still use the same lesson plan, but you're going to change it up quite a bit. There are samples on the material section that include the vowel teams, so you can take a look at those and kind of use those for inspiration. But for both the V and the R, the syllable division rule is not relevant to the V and the R. You're going to use the syllable division rules from the other syllables in that word, and then the vowel team or the R control team is going to stay within the same syllable. And since there's no syllable division rule, what you're focusing your lesson on, it's just exposure to different words and different sounds. So you have the IGH, which makes the I sound. So you have vowels and you have consonants that together make this particular sound. All I need to know, there's no rule, there's no syllable division. All I need to do is show my students as many words as possible with this combination of sounds that does the sound I. And those are the words that I'll work with. Those are the sentences that I'll work with. So here, all of these cards that I'm about to show you, these are all my different sound. Each one of these is a different vowel team. So it's 30 something vowel teams. Therefore, you're not going to do just one lesson plan for all the 30 sounds. You're probably going to choose, okay, I'm going to focus this lesson on the vowel teams that make the long A sound. How do you find that? When you go to MyMax, if you go into MaxWords and into Clover, and into the V, the vowel team specifically. And again, this is for next month, but since I'm not going to do a session, I'm just giving you this pointer now. You might want to do one lesson for the long A sounds. So you'll have all of these in that one lesson. You might want to do one lesson for all the long E sounds and a separate lesson for all the long I sounds. Up to you how you chunk it, how you separate it. Bottom line is you're not going to do all the vowel teams in one lesson because it's going to be too much. So I suggest doing the long A, the long E, the long I separately. And you might even want to do it more paced out. One for the EIGH, one for the EI, one for the AI, etc. an acceptable break of the lesson plans would be all the long A sounds together. I don't think that's too much for the students, but again, you know the students that you'll be working with, so if you need to do one by one, by all means, do one by one. So that's what I wanted to show you today. Remember, tomorrow or the day after, I'm going to be sending you the recording along with the template and all the things that I've pulled up on my screen. And then you have until March the 8th to submit your 4 first lesson plans for Clover. Remember, next session, March 9th, is going to be ran by Dr. Levy, and it's going to focus on dyslexia. I'll send you that communication as well. Along with the recording, I'll send that reminder so you know what to expect next time. Questions before I let you guys go today? Yes, Colleen.
This isn't connected to, well, it actually is one. So one quick question. So the vowel team and the art controlled lesson plans, those are also due on March 8th?
No, that's for the following month.
Those are the following one. So my other question was on the lessons that I just submitted. Yes. Dr. Levy told me to write a reflection. Yes. I haven't been doing that. I missed that part. What am I writing a reflection on, and where am I adding that?
She likes asking from teachers in general, after you've been through a few training sessions, for you to kind of tell her, and this is not part of the certification, it's not part of your lesson plan, but just how you see the program possibly helping your students. What you've gathered from, writing these lesson plans, from working with students with it, if you have, and how you see it benefiting your students, implementing the strategies, how you see that benefiting your students. That's the reflection. I've learned this and this, and I think that it'll help my students because of this and that. That's all she wants. Short paragraph. It doesn't need to be super formal. It can be a couple lines, and that's it. All right. Cheryl, Sarah, Christina, any questions from you guys?
No, I will probably review this video just because I have little one with me, but I appreciate you recording it. It's so helpful.
All right, good. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, and thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Cheryl, part of my A team. Any questions?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And Sarah, I'll expect that email from you. Other than that, you're free to go. I won't see you next time. I might jump in for a second, but remember, March 9th, Dr. Levy is going to do it. I'll send you an email with the recording and a reminder of all of that. And then I'll see you, if not next month, the following. All right. Talk to you soon, guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.